the United States Army just bet on a new $20 million tactical directed energy weapon. And the bet came just in time for China to be the first victim. The escalating tensions in the South China Sea result in a believable, unavoidable, expected, full-blown conflict between China and the United States. The ocean, once a trading highway, was now a cauldron of warships, buzzing drones, and satellites staring down from the heavens. The dispute begins over territorial claims around the Spratly Islands, where China's artificial island bases, armed with DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles, threatened US naval operations in an explosive fashion. Concrete islands rose like scars across the turquoise waters, bristling with launchers and radars. The message was clear. China intended to hold these waters by force. Over the next few days, the US responds with the largest aircraft carrier in the world, the $13 billion USS Gerald Ford, alongside a carrier strike group comprising 12 ships, including two $1.88 billion Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and three $1 billion Ticonderoga-class cruisers. The sea foamed under their wakes as the American armada pressed forward, steel against steel, pride against pride. China responds with its most experienced aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, accompanied by its strike group. 8 900 million Type 055 destroyers later make their entrance too. The ocean became crowded with giants. The fighters which had been going to and from bases include 154 the fourth-generation carrier-capable J-15 fighters and 65 the fifth-generation J-20 stealth fighters for China. The roar of jet engines turned the skies into thunder. For the United States, the fleet included 124 the fourth-generation Fa-18EF Super Hornets and 95 the fifth-generation F-35C Lightning IIs. Their silhouettes streaked across the horizon, weapons armed, orders sharp. The conflict's early phase saw intense naval and air, engagements with each side losing approximately 10% of their deployed assets, costing the US $15 billion and China $12 billion in equipment. Explosions dotted the sea, black columns of smoke rose like tombstones, and both nations bled steel. But it was only the beginning. As the weeks drew on, the conflict intensified. The US Pacific Fleet, strong with 290 ships and 3,700 aircraft, faced China's People's Liberation Army Navy, boasting 350 ships. However, China's numerical advantage and hypersonic missiles like the YJ-21 sank 2 US destroyers and heavily damaged the USS Ronald Reagan, which was summoned to back up the USS Gerald Ford strike group. For every American victory, China exacted a price. China's swarms of agile drones were also perhaps the main threat to the US Navy. They flew low, in swarms that looked like dark clouds spreading over the horizon. Though the relatively low cost of these drones allowed China to deploy them in great numbers, the US side was forced to take them out with much more expensive air defense missiles. Millions spent to shoot down machines worth thousands. The economic toll was staggering. In not too long, the United States had spent $200 billion on operations, including $50 billion in munitions. China's costs were less than half of this. So while the US was winning the battle in terms of damage to enemy assets, China could keep up their strategy far easier, as it was far less costly. At this rate, US stock was depleting quickly. They had to do something. Then Admiral James Kilby, the Chief of Naval Operations, did something incredible. Prior to the breakout of this conflict, he had kept a keen eye on a new special weapon the US Army was developing. The weapon is called the Integrated Fires Protection Capability High-Power Microwave Weapon. On the streets of the military, though the weapon is known as Leonidas the Invincible. First entering the spotlight for its potential in 2020, Leonidas uses solid-state gallium nitride semiconductors to emit electromagnetic pulses that disrupt or destroy target electronics, offering a non-kinetic, cost-effective alternative to traditional missile defenses. It was unlike almost anything before, and it promised to tilt the balance of any war in favor of whichever side wielded it. the invisible became a sword sharper than steel. While Admiral Kilby charged Leonidas's manufacturer, Epirus, to build a naval version of the Leonidas. This was quite the ask, but to the Admiral's surprise, Epirus was well ahead of the Navy and had already built not one, but 3 naval versions of Leonidas. It focused its high-powered microwave pulses to disable drones, missiles, and other electronic systems by overheating their circuitry. Invisible waves cooked circuits, leaving machines lifeless in seconds. Unlike kinetic interceptors like the SM-6 missile, this high-powered microwave weapon has come out of seemingly nowhere to take charge, a long way from its humble beginnings. Epirus Incorporated, a defense technology company based in Torrance, California, privately funded Leonidas's initial development. In 2021, field tests demonstrated the ability to neutralize rotary and fixed-wing drones, and even disable a ship's outboard motor, expanding its counter-electronics potential. By October 2022, Epirus integrated Leonidas onto Stryker vehicles. Epirus secured a $66.1 million Army contract in January 2023 to deliver Leonidas prototypes for the program, as Leonidas outperformed its 6 competitors. In March 2025, Epirus announced production readiness. 4 months later in July, Epirus announced it had received a $43 million contract from the US Army's office for delivery of 2 new and advanced second-generation Leonidas air defense systems and for the upgrade of older systems. The system was mounted on modified Zumwalt-class destroyers, as these ships boasted 105,000 shaft horsepower, enough power to drive this beast of electronic warfare. In the conflict, Leonidas's debut occurred during Operation Thunderbolt near Scarborough Shoal. 3 Zumwalt destroyers, equipped with Leonidas, engaged a Chinese flotilla of 15 ships, including 2 Type 055 destroyers and a Type 075 amphibious assault ship. In 12 minutes, Leonidas neutralized 30 incoming YJ-221 missiles out of 37, an 81% interception rate. Fireballs died mid-air, circuits fried. It also disabled 8 Chinese vessels by targeting radar and propulsion systems, rendering them inoperable without sinking them. Ships floated like corpses, powerless, but intact. The engagement cost the US $12,000 in energy, while China lost $4 billion in assets. The cost of victory numbers were now strongly in favor of the US. Over the following weeks, Leonidas continued to dictate the war, this momentum. A Zumwalt used Leonidas to repel a coordinated Chinese attack involving 50 J-15s and 100 drones. Leonidas achieved a 98% interception rate, dazzling 49 aircraft and downing 95 drones, costing $20,000 in energy versus China's $250 million in losses. China attempted to counter Leonidas with electronic warfare, deploying Type 8 and 15 spy ships to jam US systems. US losses were minimal, 2 F-35s seized and $50 million in base repairs. China's hypersonic missile stockpile was ineffective against Leonidas's rapid targeting. A single Leonidas system could engage 10 targets per second, compared to the 3 of traditional Aegis defense systems. Due to this, hypersonic missiles in Operation Dragon's Fury 2 were dazzled and misdirected. Warheads spun harmlessly into the sea. With its most unstoppable conventional weapons now being stopped, and no sign of victory in most practical scenarios, China began considering the big red nuclear button. And indeed, they were. All authorizations had been granted. Targets had been selected. Command and control centers were secure. And they were ready to execute the launch of an entire army of medium-range nuclear-armed ballistic missiles. One push of a button away from igniting a nuclear war with a nuclear-armed United States. The Chinese president paused to say, and I quote, "If you want to end the ongoing conflict, subscribe to this channel and give this video a like right now." Okay, it's what we said. Anyway, do it for world peace. Thanks for watching.